Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Wi-Fi. It's an invisible thing we use every day. Some say Wi-Fi was created when Apple was created. Some say it was inspired by Stephen Hawking and started by Tesla. Others say it was invented by Vic Hayes, who is considered the father of Wi-Fi. And more say it was actually invented by scientists at CSIRO. I would call it Cicero, but I have always called that Cicero, because, yeah. Now, technically, all these men created the technology of Wi-Fi we know of today, but the basic fundamental technology of what would go on to help these men create Wi-Fi was invented by a woman, Hedy Lamarr. Let's get started. Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler was born on November 9th, 1914 in Vienna, Austria. She was the only child to parents Emil Kiesler, who was a bank director, and Gertrude Trude Kiesler, who was a concert pianist. Both parents were from wealthy Jewish families and Jewish themselves, and since her mother was in the arts, Hedy received a debutante education. This included piano lessons, ballet classes, and horseback riding lessons. Hedy loved her father. She was a daddy's girl. They would often go on long walks through the Vienna streets, and he would explain to Hedy how the streetcars worked and how their electricity was generated at a power plant. With these walks and her awesome dad, it is no wonder she had an early interest in engineering. By age 5, she got a music box, took it apart, put it back together piece by piece, and it flippin' worked. She's 5, took that apart, put it back together, and it still do. That's a different brain. As she grew up, she was interested in mechanical stuff, but she was also fascinated by theater and films. When she was 12, she won a beauty contest and began taking acting classes. Now, if it wasn't for the social structure in Vienna, I'm pretty darn sure she would not have gone into acting, because if she did indeed want to be an engineer or a scientist, at the time, this just wasn't something available to Viennese girls in the 1930s. So we can assume that is because she went into the theater and movie world. One day, being a teenager, she forged a note from her mother that said, quote, "My daughter won't be able to come to school today." She gave it to one of her teachers, and she walked to Sascha Film, but at the time it was the Tobias Sascha Film Industry AG. This was the largest Austrian film production company of the silent film and early sound film period. She walked into the building and was able to get hired as a script girl, also known as a script supervisor. This is a member of a film crew who basically is the editors and writers' representative on the set. They monitor the camera shots in order to maintain consistency between scenes. They work closely with the director and communicate with many other departments. That is really freaking basic. These people do a lot. Her first movie was as an extra in the 1930 film Money on the Street, but that movie didn't amount to anything big. By 1931, when Hedy was 17, Austrian film director and theater producer Max Reinhardt took a liking to her and cast her in the play called The Weaker Sex. Max was so impressed with her performance that he took her to Berlin. However, when she was there, she never trained with Max or appeared in any of his Berlin productions. But when she met Russian film producer Alexis Granowski, he cast her in his debut film, The Trunks of Mr. O.F. in 1931. The Trunks of Mr. O.F. A Mr. of? Mr. O.F.? The Trunks of Mr. O.F. Mr. of. She was then given the lead role in the 1932 film No Money Needed, but it was that next year she starred in a film that would make her internationally famous. In 1933, when Hedy was 18, she was given the lead role of Eva German, a neglected young wife of a passionless older man who goes on to have an affair with an engineer in the Czechoslovakian film Ecstasy. From the title alone, this is a very risque and that's putting it mildly, film that became famous and hated for a lot of sexually charged stuff. Like, there's scenes of nudity all over the place, and there's an up-close shot of 18-year-old Hedy's face in the middle of an orgasm. It's a lot going on. I found a clip. I'm not going to show you, but it's basically softcore porn. We're just going to say that. It's basically softcore porn. Now, Hedy says that she was duped by the director and producer because in the script there were no mentions of nude scenes. During an outdoor scene, when Hedy was told to disrobe, she refused and threatened to quit. I would too if I was told you have to get naked, and getting naked was not in the flippin' script. I'm not getting naked if it wasn't in the freaking script. If it wasn't in the script, I would have mentally prepared myself, or I would have just said, I'm not gonna do it. But power imbalance here. And we know how that works. Director Gustav Mahati threatened her by saying that if she did quit, she would have to pay for all the scenes already filmed. Power balance and blackmailing. Hollywood. In any country. Now, to her knowledge, Gustav told her that the cameras were using long shots or wide shots, so no intimate details would be seen. So she relented and continued with the scene. However, during the preview in Prague, sitting next to this director jerk, she saw numerous up-close, detailed shots of her and her nude body. Oh. When Hedy saw the scenes, she was so furious, as anyone would flippin' be, that she screamed at Gustav for tricking her. Personally, I would have punched the jerk, but that's just me. Gustav, of course, dismisses her claims. The film gained international fame after winning an award at the Venice Film Festival, and throughout Europe, it was championed as an artistic movie. In America, it was thought as overly sexual, aka pornographic, and got a lot of negative press, especially among women's groups that said, in a sense, this will destroy our young godly kids' minds. It was banned in Germany, denounced by Pope Pius XI, and wasn't released in the US till 1935 with a heavy amount of edits. Didn't watch the whole thing, but the few little things I saw, yep. By the movie's premiere, Hedy married her first husband, wealthy arms dealer Friedrich Mandel, in August of 1933. When the movie premiered, he spent $280,000, or in today's money, $6.7 million, to buy every single copy of the Ecstasy movie in an attempt to suppress the film. Now, if you've ever tried to buy every single copy of any movie released all over the globe, obviously that's not going to work. Love the thought process, but it's not going to work. Not going to work. Now, we're going to back up a bit. After Ecstasy, Hedy played a couple more roles in theater. With her roles, she naturally got a lot of admirers because she's really freaking pretty, and they would send her flowers and, of course, would try to meet her. She sent a lot of them away, including from then stranger Friedrich Mandel, who became obsessed with her. Obsessed with her. On top of being an arms merchant, he was a munitions manufacturer and was reportedly the third richest man in Austria. Hedy fell for his charm and crazy parties because he had a lot of money. He would put on a lot of really good crazy parties. I mean, like, maybe better than the Great Gatsby kind of parties. Now, this guy, her parents hated him for very good reason. Since they were Jewish and Friedrich, whoever his name is, had close business and social ties to Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini, who at the time was getting all buddy-buddy with Hitler, you kind of can't blame them for hating him. I hate him. But love is love, and Hedy is stubborn, and so they got married on August 10th, 1933, when Hedy was 18 and Friedrich was 33. According to her autobiography, her marriage to Friedrich was extremely controlling, and after the movie Ecstasy was released, seeing the orgasm scene and his really dumb, futile attempt to buy every single copy of it, he was so upset by the movie that he prevented her from pursuing her acting career and claimed she was kept as a prisoner in their castle home, Schloss Swassunau. That is a castle. She's literally Rapunzeling in there. Since Hedy was the wife of a basically very controlling husband, she was forced to attend many meetings and parties where she was supposed to just sit, look pretty, and shut up. When he met with professionals in military technology, this was her introduction to applied science. This marriage eventually, naturally, became unbearable, so she decided to leave not only him, but the country in 1937. In one version, she convinced Friedrich to let her wear all her jewelry for a dinner party and slipped out afterwards. And in other accounts, this one specifically from her autobiography, she disguised herself as a maid and fled to Paris. She says that he was extremely paranoid that she was cheating on him, classic abusive partner claims, and wrote about the marriage, quote, "I knew very soon I could never be an actress while I was his wife. He was the absolute monarch in this marriage. I was like a doll. I was like a thing, some object of art which had to be guarded and imprisoned, having no mind, no life of its own." End quote. Hedy arrived in London in 1937. It is there she met Canadian-American film producer and co-founder of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios, or as you know it, MGM Studios, Louis B. Mayer. He was scouting for talent in Europe, mainly buying contracts of Jewish actors who were fleeing from Europe because of the Nazis, and these actors obviously could no longer work safely in Europe because, again, Nazis. When they met, Louis offered her $125 or $2,726 a week for an exclusive contract with MGM, and Hedy turned it down, thinking it was a lowball offer. In this day and age, personally, please give me almost $3,000 a week. Please do. At least I could buy milk. But in a totally savage move, she then booked herself on the same boat Louis was on, the luxury liner SS Normandy. Yep, that was bound for New York City in order to negotiate with him. "I don't like your offer." Beep, beep, boop, boop. "Oh, what are you doing on this boat?" I love that. And she somehow impressed him so much that he raised the contract payment from $225 to $500 or $10,900 a week. I would have taken the almost $3,000, but I will take almost 11 grand, please. That would be amazing. But there were two catches. She had to learn to speak English in 6 months, and she had to change her name to distance herself from the movie Ecstasy. Her name, Hedwig Kiesler, was too German sounding, and Louis's wife was a big fan of the 1920s silent film actress Barbara Lamarr. So from this, Hedwig, Hedy for short, Lamarr, smushed together, Hedy Lamarr was her new name. And she was brought to Hollywood in 1938, and Louis began promoting her as the world's most beautiful woman. She freaking blew up in Hollywood because A, look at her. B, she was very talented. And C, look at her. Her breakout film was in the 1938 film Algiers alongside Charles Boyer, and the film was a national sensation. According to a viewer of the movie, when Hedy first appeared on screen, quote, "Everyone gasped. Lamarr's beauty literally took one's breath away." From this movie on, and not all that surprising, she was cast as the token, glamorous, beautiful, seductress girl in numerous films, and the MGM movie-making machine put her in a lot of films every year throughout the 1940s. She was in Boomtown and Comrade X, both starring alongside William Clark Gabe, or the King of Hollywood, and a scrumptious of a man. She was in Ziegfeld Girl alongside Judy Garland, The Conspirators with Paul Henreid, Her Highness and the Bellboy, Let's Live a Little, and more. She settled in Beverly Hills and rubbed shoulders with massive socialites like John F. Kennedy and Howard Hughes. In 1939, Hedy met screenwriter and producer Jean Marquis, and after a short whirlwind romance, they married on March 5th, 1939, and he moved into Hedy's adorable home called Hedgerow Farm in Beverly Hills, had a Great Dane named Donner, and adopted a son. However, this is where things get fuzzy. During her life, she said that her first son, James Lamarr Marquis, born on January 9th, 1939, was not biologically hers and was adopted through her marriage to Jean. Because, little backstory, the marriage between the two of them wasn't the greatest. So, in order to save it, Jean had the idea to adopt a son who turned out to be James. But later, James claimed to have found papers showing that he was the out-of-wedlock son of Hedy and actor John Lauder, but then a DNA test proved that James wasn't biologically related to either Hedy or John or Jean, but rather indeed was adopted from Europe at 7 months old. Identity crisis and a half for this poor guy. Even though Hedy loved acting and being a Hollywood starlight, she was described as a magnet of warmth, very resourceful and humble. But when she was alone, she felt lonely and homesick and spent her free time doing what she first fell in love with, problem solving and tinkering. Hedy and Howard Hughes became kindred spirits, very fast friends, because in addition to being a film producer, he was an aeronautical engineer. He gave her equipment to run experiments on in her trailer between set changes, takes, makeup, hair, any other downtime on her many movie sets. Most of her work was done at her engineering table in her home, doing sketches for creative solutions to simple, mundane, everyday problems. She shared her idea for a dissolving tablet that could turn a soldier's canteen drink into a flavored carbonated drink with Howard, and he liked it so much that he lent her some of his chemists. Apparently, you can lend people chemists of yours. I'm not borrowing a book, dude. Mind you, this tasted like Alka-Seltzer, but still. Basically, she came up with any kind of a dissolving tablet. She basically was like, what if we could dissolve tablets? And dissolving tablets are a thing today. When I say this girl loved inventing, she loved inventing. Quote, "Inventions are easy for me to do. I don't have to work on ideas. They come naturally." End quote. And that's an understatement. She came up with improvements to the wing design of Howard's planes that were based on the fastest fish and birds, and proposed a change in the square shape of the plane to a linear, more aerodynamic shape. She came up with a tissue box attachment that helped deposit used tissues, basically a trash can that you stick onto your freaking tissue box, a special shower seat for old people to swivel in and out of the bathtub, made improvements to the traffic light, and came up with a freaking glow-in-the-dark dog collar. Glow-in-the-dark dog collar. Again, I don't know when or how that was invented, but the point is, again, she thought, I'm going to make a glow-in-the-dark dog collar. Couldn't get any more information, but that is just nuts. By 1940, Hedy was appalled by what was happening in Europe, as the rest of the world was. When the Nazis took Austria, her family was classified as political enemies. And with Hedy being in the US, she couldn't help her family at all. When America entered World War II after Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, Hedy decided she had to do something to help. Hedy wanted to join the NIC, or National Inventors Council. This served as a type of clearinghouse for inventors with possible military and national defense ties that brought these inventors to the US Army. However, people told her that she could better help with the war effort by selling war bonds using her celebrity status. So she and a soldier named Eddie Rose did bond rallies in 16 cities and sold over $7 million million worth of war bonds. Now, this helped, sure, but Hedy wasn't satisfied and knew she could do more. To get to this next part, we need to go back to the 1930s when Hedy was married to Friedrich Mandel, whatever, we don't like him. Remember, she was forced to attend many meetings with him, and it was while at these meetings that Hedy learned that navies needed a way to guide torpedoes to their intended targets through the water. Now, radio controls had been proposed, but the worry was that the enemy could jam the guidance system and make it go off course. The biggest thing Hedy was worried about was the Battle of the Atlantic, which was the longest continuous military campaign during World War II from September of 1939 to May of 1945. The Allies' goals were three things: set up a blockade to the Axis powers, project military power across the seas, and secure Allied sea movements. Between 1939 and 1941, the Germans destroyed 29 British ships with torpedoes. Not good. The Allies knew that to defeat the Third Reich's submarines, they needed a new guidance system. So the Germans couldn't intercept or jam the signals. This is where Hedy comes in. Hedy was at a dinner party in 1940 where she met composer, pianist, and inventor George Antheil. He had lost his brother in the early days of the war, and he too wanted to defeat Hitler, as the rest of the world did. At the time, he had composed Mechanical Ballet. This was a synchronized avant-garde piece written for 16 pianos, 2 grand pianos, bells, and a xylophone. This music was the foundation of Hedy and George's idea, frequency hopping. Stick with me here, okay? Since they were both pianists, they spent a lot of late night brainstorming sessions playing a game on the piano. One would play a song and the other would see how fast they could recognize it. From this game, this was their thought process. If two musicians are playing the same song, they can hop around the keyboard in perfect unison because they both know the song and can play different notes, but the song sounds the same. However, if someone listening to the song doesn't know it, they don't know what keys are coming next. AKA, the signal is hidden because of the consistent changing of notes or frequencies. How does this apply to torpedoes? I'm glad you asked. The Germans can easily jam the frequencies because they know the song or radio signal, but they can't intercept if the song is a constant symphony of changing notes or frequencies. Ain't that brilliant? When I was doing the research and I found it explained kind of like that, I went, oh, because we've all heard like when double piano players are doing the cool like piano battle. That's basically what they were kind of doing, and that was how frequency hopping came to freaking be. It's nuts. They called it the secret communication system, and Hedy named the system frequency hopping because as the torpedo was moving and communicating with the ship, it would cross a new frequency every second, making it hard for anyone to jam the signal because it was hopping all over the radio. It's so simple. When you look at the patent, no, it's not, but the thought process, that's so simple. The final version, that was a lynx just went by my, oh my God, a lynx just whoa, a lynx just went by my door. Okay. The final version of the system had 88 frequencies, the same number as the number of keys on a piano. When you hear it put in such simple terms, you're like, whoa. Oh, I had so much fun deciphering this stuff. In late December 1940, they submitted their initial idea to the NIC, and by early 1941, the NIC introduced George to Professor of Electrical Engineering at California Institute of Technology, or Caltech, Samuel Stewart McEwen, to consult on the electrical systems and make all the zing, 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 zings work. The zing zing, that's the frequency hopping. Zing zing. Bing 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 bing. I see it as kind of like the what's that thing? It's not ping ponging. That's not, no. Pinball. I see the frequency hopping as a pinball machine. That was what I was trying to say. My brain, love it. Hedy did her due diligence and hired the law firm Leon to draft the patent application. Their patent was granted on August 11th, 1942. George and Hedy were both on the patent, and Hady's name was Hedy Keesler Marquis. Now you would think when the Navy heard of this game-changing invention, they would be all over it. Well, they basically told them to kick rocks and said that the invention was too big to fit in a torpedo. No further looking into it, nothing. Saw the size, went, no. Not the tech. The size is what they didn't want. I don't even know if they looked at the freaking tech. I really think that they just saw how big it was. I don't know how big it was, but I would assume the tech alone, you'd be like, oh. So, what did Hedy do after this? She locked the patent in a safe, labeled it top secret, and both of them just went back to their normal lives. Mind you, the Enigma code had already been cracked by this time. It was cracked in 1941, and you can learn all about it in Benedict Cumberbatch's The Imitation Game. Love that movie so much. It's a great movie. Go watch it. But that's only about battle plans. This tech stops a sub from blowing up your ships. If I can stop a torpedo from blowing up a ship of mine, I'm gonna do that. Anyway, Hedy left MGM in 1945 after being with them for 2 years and established a production company with film and TV producer Jack Chertok. I know this is a jump. I know this is a weird jump, but she had a couple of flop movies for the next few years, including The Strange Woman in 1946. That was over budget and a flop at the box office. Dishonored Lady in 1947, another over budget and flop. And Let's Live a Little in 1948, same thing. But in every movie, the critics and audience still loved Hedy. Her biggest success was in the 1950 biblical depiction of the story of Samson from the Book of Judges, Samson and Delilah. This was the highest grossing film of the year 1950, grossing at the box office $25.6 million, or $333.6 million today. This made the movie the third highest grossing film ever at the time, behind The Best Years of Our Lives and Gone with the Wind, and was the second most popular movie in Britain. It won 2 Oscars at the 1951 Academy Awards for Best Color Art Direction and Best Color Costume Design. Because remember, at this point in time, the jump from black and white to color is still going on. Hedy went back to MGM after this movie and starred in A Lady Without Passport, flop, but she made 2 more popular movies with Paramount, because at this time Paramount and MGM are merged together, Copper Canyon and My Favorite Spy. In 1954, her career took a dive when she went to Italy to play multiple roles in Lovers of 3 Queens. This movie she starred in and produced, but she lacked the experience to produce a movie or series of short films, which is what this was, this massive. It would be like you being the main producer of Game of Thrones. It's not going to happen. It lost millions of dollars, and she couldn't get the distribution needed to get the funds back. She did a couple more movies towards the end of the 1950s, and in 1966, she was supposed to star in the psychological horror movie Picture Mommy Dead, but she was let go after she collapsed on set from nervous exhaustion. Zsa Zsa Gabor replaced her, and after this, Hedy retired from the screen. Before she retired in 1960, Hedy got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. During all this, Hedy had divorced her husband Gene in October of 1941. But this marriage would not be the last, and all I'm going to say for the next about 2 minutes, Buckle up. In 1943, she married John Lauder, the guy that James thought was his baby daddy, but wasn't. That guy. He gets points because when they married, he did adopt James. So he gets points for that. Together they had 2 kids, Denise Lauder, born in 1945, who later married short-lived baseball player for the Philadelphia Phillies, Larry Colton, and Anthony, born in 1947, who became an illustrator. That marriage ended in 1947. In 1951, Hedy married musician, nightclub owner, and restaurateur Ernest Ted Stauffer. That lasted only a year. They divorced in 1952. In 1953, she married Texan oilman H. Howard Lee in 1953, divorced in 1960. But between this time, she became a naturalized citizen at the age of 38 on April 10th, 1953. And Hedy, along with Howard, designed and developed her 6th and final marriage was to her divorce lawyer, kid you not, Louis J. Boys Jr. in 1963. Then they divorced in 1965, and I'm pretty sure she couldn't use him in this divorce. Who marries their divorce lawyer after he helped her divorce 5 of her husbands, and then you as the divorce lawyer, seeing this pattern, marries a client of yours, and you are shocked that you get divorced from a person you helped divorce 5 times? The math ain't mathin'. After this marriage, she stayed unmarried for the rest of her days. The year 1966 is a really weird year for her. Hedy published her first autobiography, Ecstasy and Me, My Life as a Woman, in the beginning of 1966, and it spent 4 weeks at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Now, this is where things get weird. Very basically, Hedy sued her ghostwriters, Leo Guild and Cy Rice, because she said that many of the details in the book were fake. She wanted the book overturned to her by a judge. The judge said no, the book was published, and she wanted $21 million for damages. But nothing happened in this case. Then, she was sued by a guy named Gene Ringgold, who thought the book plagiarized stuff from an article he wrote in 1965. It was a year of suing for her. Oh my God. And because of the lawsuits, she had to sell a lot of her valuables, right? So for some reason, she thought that shoplifting would be a really good idea. Of course it wasn't, and she got arrested in LA, but the charges were dropped. Okay. She then sued freaking Mel Brooks. I know, I wasn't expecting him to show up either. And Warner Brothers in 1974 for $10 million for using her name in the comedy satire movie Blazing Saddles without her permission. Now, apparently, a character in the movie called her name was mad that she was being called her name constantly. That was the basis of her lawsuit. Mind you, her name is spelled different in the movie. If I can find the clip, I'll play it right now.
Thank you, Hedy, thank you.
It's not Hedy, it's Hedy Lamarr.
The hell are you worried about? This is 1874. You'll be able to sue her.
Look, Herman, I'm in Hedy Lamarr's shoes.
Hedy. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To Hedy Lamarr.
to Hedy Lamarr.
That's Hedy.
Hedy.
She again didn't get anything from this. They settled out of court, and the studio said sorry for, quote, almost using her name. Savage, Warner Bros. And Mel said, it's sad that Hedy, quote, never got the joke. It's Mel Brooks, what are you gonna do? Who sues Mel Brooks? Trust me, I was confused when he entered the chat too. I was like, why is Mel Brooks here? By 1981, her eyesight was failing, so she officially retired from public life and settled in Miami Beach, Florida. She got dumb again in 1991 when she was arrested again for shoplifting again, this time about $21 worth of eye drops and laxatives. Okay. She pled no contest and the charges were dropped because she pinky promised she wouldn't break any laws for a whole year. Wow. Okay. We are going to pause with Hedy and go back to the 1950s and her invention. By the 1950s, Sylvania, an electronical manufacturer, utilized frequency hopping to make a system for communicating with submarines. And by the early 1960s, this tech was used on U.S. warships to stop the Soviets from jamming the signals during the Cuban Missile Crisis. When the 1970s rolled around, car phones became very popular, and carriers used hopping to enable thousands of callers to share many radio frequencies. And this tech was in the earliest version of cell phone networks. Then, when the 1990s came, frequency hopping was everywhere and became the required standard by the FCC for secure radio communications. And it's from this that Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and GPS was born. All this technology can be traced back to the core of what George and Hedy invented. If it hadn't been for what they did, this and the Wi-Fi that you use and the GPS and Google Maps or Apple Maps, I hope you don't use Apple Maps because that thing's dumb, would have never existed, or would have existed but would have come up a bit more slowly because nobody was thinking of this until Hedy and George. However, throughout all these astronomical inventions, neither George nor Hedy were ever recognized. Not till 1997, when both of them were honored together with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, or EFF, Pioneer Award for those that have made significant contributions to computer use. That same year, she was awarded the Invention Convention's Bulby Nass Spirit of Achievement Award, also known as the Oscars of Inventing. This is given to people whose creative life achievements in arts, business, science, or invention areas have made massive contributions to society. When Hedy got this award, this made her the first woman to receive this award. In 1998, Austria gave Hedy the Victor Kaplan Medal of the Austrian Association of Patent Holders and Inventors. Unfortunately, she became estranged from her oldest son, James, when he was 12 after she basically kicked him out of the house. They didn't speak for a good 50 years, and when Hedy passed, James found out that she had written him out of her will. He did try to sue for control of the $3.3 million estate, but settled for $50,000. In the final decade of her life, ironically, the phone became her only method of communication to the world, her friends, even her children, often talking up to 6 to 7 hours every day. She really never left her home. I couldn't exactly find why she never left her home after 1991. I would assume it's because of her failing eyesight and she just chose to not overcome it or get help, because there is help for blind people, but that's my opinion. Hedy Lamarr died on January 19th, 2000 of heart disease in Castleberry, Florida at the age of 85. She was cremated and part of her ashes were spread by her youngest son, Anthony, in Austria's Vienna woods, abiding by her last wish. In 2014, a memorial in Vienna's Central Cemetery was unveiled in her honor and where the remainder of her ashes are buried. In 2014, the Institute for Quantum Optics and Quantum Information, or IQOQI, renamed their quantum telescope on the roof of the University of Vienna after her. In that same year, Hedy was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame for Frequency Hopping Spread Spectrum Technology, or FHSS, which is the official name for what she invented. On November 9th, 2023, Google did a freaking cute, sassy doodle of her. In pop culture, she has been portrayed in many movies, TV shows, Broadway musicals, New York Times bestseller books, dance productions. She was even in a video game, Half-Life 2, where she is the name of a main character's pet head crab, which is this hella creepy looking thing. Oh my god, y'all, I even learned the inspiration for the original Catwoman was partly, majorly, based on her. On top of like some other woman that his name is slipped in my mind. But she is basically inspiration for freaking Catwoman. And with this, Anne Hathaway, who played Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises, watched multiple movies Hedy was in to incorporate her into her character in The Dark Knight Rises. So the next time you watch The Dark Knight Rises, which I hope is at least once a year because it's a great movie, when you see Catwoman, think of her. In 2017, a documentary focused on Hedy was released called Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story, where it talked about her life, technological work, and her hidden crippling addiction to drugs. In 2019, Johnny Depp, I know, again, random, wrote a song with Tommy Henriksen called This Is a Song for Miss Hedy Lamarr. I found the song, I'll play it.
This is a song for Miss Hedy Lamarr, erased by the same world that made her a star. Spun out of beauty, trapped by its web, she's a perfect cocoon, entwined in gold thread. Her beauty is spectacle, her thoughts too pure. The light of her being, her exotic allure, was torn at the seams for daring to dream. It's so hard to speak when you're frozen in. Scream.
And was in Johnny and Jeff Beck's 2022 album, 18. Out of left field completely. Her son, Anthony, explained his mother as, quote, "My mother was an extremely intelligent woman, always seething with new ideas. She was known as just being a beautiful face, but is now recognized as having invented a brilliant scientific concept, although she never made a cent out of it," end quote. For Hedy's invention, she never wanted any money, just basic credit for what she invented, and she wasn't happy that she wasn't getting the credit for it. I mean, her invention low-key kinda invented phones. I would want a little bit of credit too. But when she was recognized in 1997, she said, quote, "Well, it's about time." There you go. The long, interesting story of Hedy Lamarr, the woman who invented Wi-Fi. The basic concept of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, any kind of frequency hopping that we use today in military anything was invented by a woman. That right there is why I love doing this channel. I didn't know a freaking woman invented Wi-Fi. Woman invented Wi-Fi. You're welcome, humanity. And before I go into my outro, I'm sorry that I missed a really big part of my outro line last week. I didn't realize that I had missed it until my mom, because she watches this a lot, pointed it out to me, and I was like, I forgot the line. So, if you learned something today, and I sure hope you did, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And while you're down there, please leave a friendly comment. I will see you all in my next video. But until then, don't be well behaved. You just might make herstory. See you next time, guys.